Hi, my name is Matt Eicheldinger. I'm a content creator, I'm a teacher, and I'm also an author. So the history of holes in my underwear is pretty unique, and it very much aligns with everything I've created so far, and that as a teacher, we're given curriculum every year to work with, but it doesn't usually contain everything we need. And so my first 5 years teaching, we had to do a poetry unit with our students, but all my students had read Shel Silverstein, these things that have existed for so long, and they didn't have anything new. So I started to write poetry so that my kids had something new to read, and they did not give me good feedback at the beginning. They said, these poems are horrible, please write something else. But because of their feedback, my poems got better, and I learned what they were looking for, and the humor and the desire for longer forms of poetry. And so Holes in My Underwear is a collection of over 100 uniquely vetted poems by kids that I know work really well because I was told they were good over the course of 15 years. Oftentimes I think when we think of poetry, we think of like deep, meaningful, really dense words, and that can be intimidating for kids, but I think what kids really enjoy is when they get to read mini stories, and poetries are mini stories, and you can make them funny, and you can make them gross, and you can weave in inspirational things. And so Holes in My Underwear is all of that, and I really want to show kids like you don't have to write things that are long for them to be important or them to be silly. There's this whole unit of poetry that is open to you as a creator. So the title Holes in My Underwear, I can't take any credit for. When I originally pitched the book, I don't even know if it had a working title. It was just poems that kids will like or something very vague. And I have a great editor, Erin Pascal, who looked at my first poem, which is called Holes in My Underwear, and she's like, that has to be the title, and it became it. First and foremost, my students. What I like about my brand is that most of everything that I've created so far derived from the need in my classroom. So the Matt Sprout series was written for the reluctant readers in my room. Sticky Notes was because I was collecting so many stories from my students. And so it's always been my students that inspire me. I mean, the title of the book, Sticky Notes, is probably my most popular story. It's the story of the kid who wouldn't speak. And so I used a sticky note to engage with them over the course of the year. And that one's a pretty emotional one for a lot of educators. But there's also funny ones that resonate much farther than I'd think. Like I tell a story called The Lizard, where you think this kid is bringing this lizard to school in his backpack, and his mom called him to screaming, and then it ends up being a stuffed animal. And teachers can relate to that because there's always craziness happening in the room. But definitely my emotional stories are the ones that track the longest. There's another story called Philip, which is about a student's dog who passed away and how that was handled in the classroom. And so it's definitely the emotional stories that seem to track longer. So the Matt Sprout series, since it's based on my life, many of the silly moments are really important to me because I experience them, and oftentimes it's a laugh at my expense, which is also okay. But I think the moment I enjoy the most is in the first book when Grace grabs Matt by the shirt the first day of middle school and says, we're gonna fake date in order to be popular and go and get invited to things. Like, that actually happened to me, and at the time it felt really monumental, like, oh yes, I need to have a girlfriend, so we get invited to parties. And in hindsight, it's just this silly moment that felt really important at the time. And readers really like Grace too, which makes it that much more enjoyable. Matt Sprouts and the Chompy Wompers is inspired by a lot of true events, but compared to the first couple books, it's less moments that actually happened. The book was inspired by Pokemon because that came out when I was in middle school, and there was this big desire to collect everything, right? And this need to go find what you were missing. And so readers can expect the Chompy Wompers to kind of mimic that time of life of trying to collect things, but the undertone of the book is trying to collect them to help somebody else. Just like my other Matt Sprouts books, it's always centered with empathy and understanding, and Matt's aiming for good, but unfortunately all these crazy things happen along the way. And so readers can expect the most complicated Matt Sprouts book to date. There's a lot of trading wars that take place and things you have to remember, but I also think it's the most enjoyable of the 3 books I've written so far. Well, the next thing that I'd love to do is I'd love to create something for young adults. I have everything kind of covered right now except that category, and I've had this idea for an adventure apocalyptic trilogy that I think would be really cool with a lead female character, as well as this undertone theme of family. So can you weave that into a situation that seems really dire and really unfortunate for the world? And I think I can do it. The most rewarding part about being an author, at least right now, is that I'm on the other side of education. So often I was just in my classroom with my students creating lessons, but now I get to create things that are then used in lessons. So I get to be exposed to this whole other side of education that I never really got to be in.